Welcome to Hot Sauce, and very, very excited today to welcome Steve Tolen to chat with me. Great to have you, mate.
G'day, mate. Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Delighted to be here.
Pleasure, buddy. You and I are both always in each other's LinkedIn DMs. I can't remember when. I was just looking through our LinkedIn messages, and there's lots of dribble in there, to be honest. I was hoping for some glimmers of brilliance that I could then regale and share with everyone, but it's just a lot of noise. But mate, we connected years and years ago. I think you were at the back end of your time with Allegis, so you'd worked for a number of the bigger shops, Randstad, Allegis, in business development roles. And then you've kind of been on this really interesting journey of late, moving into Recruitment Entrepreneur Australia, running your own shop, Tolen, and then now landing as the MD of Pinpoint. So, mate.
Yeah, mate. It's
done a lot.
Yeah, I've done a lot, mate. No, I'm feeling it, mate. I'm getting old. I'm someone that always likes, a bit of a challenge. As you mentioned, I've worked with some awesome organisations, throughout my career, and I think the thing for me is always on a journey of self-development. Even now, it's I look and go, where can I continue to improve? Develop my skills, and always seeking leadership mentors that can offer me skills that I don't have. I'm very open to feedback all the time, and I'm continually looking to get better. Mate, right or wrong, I've kind of developed this personal brand over the last kind of couple of years, where I've really kind of put myself out there and tried to, I guess, focus on future trends in terms of where the market's going. So, with video, social media, LinkedIn. But it's interesting because I see right now, looking at the market with the role that I had with Tolen & Co. was going in and advising recruitment leaders, businesses how to grow, and that's actually what led me to this point. So I was actually working with Pinpoint Talent, with the founders devising the sales strategy and looking for someone to run the business, and that person ended up being me. So here I am.
Mate, how good. And on the social media stuff, I feel that's where our relationship really kind of blossomed. We'd had a few calls together over the years, like salesy calls, video calls, not formal necessarily, but somewhat stuffy, where there's we're both kind of trying to represent the businesses that we were working for. But I feel like once the social media, once you started, particularly the videos, releasing the video content of you at Brisbane Airport and you running around Sydney meeting with people, I feel that was a big unlock for us and created kind of this friendship where we do now chat quite a bit across LinkedIn. That was that a very deliberate move for you, pushing into video as a channel, as a content strategy, or was it more kind of organic how that played out?
Yeah, mate, it was very deliberate. And if I look back, I'd never really used it before, always been kind of on social media. And if I go back to my kind of methodology, which I built through Tolen & Co. The first thing, or the first objective I talk about in sales is today's age, you have to have the ability to get people's attention. That was first and foremost. And then I looked at the stats on LinkedIn. Most of the content, video content was less than kind of 6%, looking at some of the ratios. So it was actually January this year. I was sat there back at home with the kids, and I thought, what can I actually do? January tends to be a bit soft in Australia. What you could do is you could build your brand. So I set myself on a journey, and I said, 20 years I've been in recruitment, so I'm going to release 20 videos, that basically talk about, me giving advice, which I've learned on that journey. And I was gobsmacked with the amount of views that actually came across. And even looking back now, I was kind of learning on the fly. And the two things I'd say is it was that commitment and consistency, but rightly or wrongly, people started to refer to me as the LinkedIn guy. I don't know whether that's a good thing or what, but mate, it was the consistency that got me through, and I was really proud with the results. It certainly had an impact for me.
Yeah, your face in the news, you can see why you got the LinkedIn guy thing. Your face was every other day, I felt, was in the news feed, and the talking to camera thing as well, I thought was really interesting and unique. Part of me, it almost stresses me out thinking about being at Brisbane Airport with all the cabs pulling up and people looking and then talking to camera that. Was that hard to get over, that initial the hurdle of people are looking at me, people are judging me, I look stupid, that kind of feeling?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I don't need any help to look stupid. I do it organically. But, mate, I think what I realised, and you kind of land on a formula, and what people, I'm always open to feedback in, everyday life, and in the business sense. So I was saying to people, what did you think? What did you like? And feedback you get from people you trust, and so people I've known for a number of years, when simple things: smile more, look at the camera, slow down, really focus on what you're saying, and have two or three kind of key points that you want to get across. And the key thing was also not sell. So what I was trying to do was build relationships and offer advice, and it seems to stick. But to answer your question around the Brisbane airport, it was funny. I had working, trainees and things kind of coming past, and I was dealing with taxis and everything. But people like the background, and they like the fact of, I think, real simplicity. They like the fact that you were out doing stuff. That was the feedback that I kind of got. People could see that you were busy. And when I was building a business, what you wanted to show was, hey, I'm out here, I'm really having a go and doing things. And particularly in the roles that I've had over the last 20 years, everything I do is outbound. And I'm a big believer in this in terms of the mindset, which is if you're sitting there waiting for stuff to happen, you're not in control of, your own destiny. So again, it was really instigating things and basically saying to people, I'm here, I'm having a go. And that was what it was about, mate. But yeah, I just got comfortable with different kind of environments. Yeah, so I'm glad you picked up on that with the airport.
Like Kim Kardashian walking around with camera crews and lights and celebrity status.
Cheers.
Well, one thing that you mentioned there, which I think is really important, given current market conditions, we hear quite a bit across the market that it is difficult picking up work, and a lot of recruitment leaders are, where over the last maybe, or say 2020, 21, 22, there was a lot of focus around candidate attraction. It was a very candidate short market, obviously, and then that drove a lot of the attention. Now that the market has swung in the other direction, a lot of companies are trying to focus on growth and what their go-to-market sales motion looks like. How do you think this is a strategy that recruitment leaders could adopt and introduce into their teams that would be beneficial?
Mate, 100%. I think the market's changed fundamentally, especially since COVID. I think you're dealing with many different perspectives, different generations in the workforce. And, for me, I'm a middle-aged guy, as I said, we talk about the video kind of perspective, and I tell people, look, I'd never done it before January this year. I hadn't. You can go back and check in terms of when I first started doing it. I don't think I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but what I believe people picked up on is that they saw that you were vulnerable and you were having a go. And I think, going back to that point I made before, is if you're sitting there waiting for stuff to happen, it's really tough. And, when I look at the market right now, it's definitely volatile. Yes, it's a little bit kind of softer, but what I see is that people still want to engage. When you look at this from a client perspective, the feedback that I always get is the way that you engage or you interact or you actually get hold of clients, prospects has fundamentally changed. You have to bring insight. That's the first and foremost, which I talk about with the team. So insight is key. What are you seeing in the market? Why would you why would I give you my time? The old days of just catching up for a cup of coffee, I think they're gone. You've really got to work hard. How do you get in front of people? From a recruitment leader perspective, the one thing that I've endeavored to do, and I'm only in week 5 here at kind of Pinpoint, it was really lead by example, lead from the front. So if I look at our team, they've had a tough kind of last 12 months. There's not as many jobs that are kind of coming through. So showing different ways in which you can navigate uncertainties. And I always say the two things I look at, attitude and activity. Are we up for it? What are you doing? How are you engaging with people? Are you using social media? Again, you've seen that I use videos, I put posts out, but you have to lead from the front. This is my belief. And what we've seen even over the past 4 weeks is we've seen a real uplift in vacancies that are coming through, people trying new things. Even one of my consultants, Jai Jeffries, who got nominated for a Candidate Excellence Award recently. We had a bit of a running joke in here, who was going to be the first one to put a video out, and he did it. It took 4 weeks, and I was so proud, to see that kind of vulnerability of someone going, hey, I've never done one before, and probably took him about 60 to 70 takes to get it right, but he did it. And, when you look at this kind of stepping off the ledge, I've got this big belief that you only get growth from stepping out the comfort zone. So I think that the advice that I give to any kind of recruitment leader, anyone in recruitment at the moment, is you've got to try different things. And if your team are struggling and they're having a tough time, which many people are, you've got to show them the way forward, right? And if you're expecting them to do things and try different tactics, you've got to show them the way. So, mate, I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I feel when I was back in the seat years ago, a lot of the leadership was like via spreadsheet of like, reporting on KPIs and very like directive, whereas this is new, at least in terms of what I've observed in the recruitment world. And I'm sure the recruiters, like, I remember I had one leader, AJ, shout out to AJ, he's in Hong Kong now, and he used to be, instead of like giving you coaching on business development calls, he'd sit next to you and he'd jump on the phone and do calls in front of you. And I just remember that was really powerful, seeing him again, like vulnerable, because sometimes like he dialed a bad number and somebody like told him to get fucked or something like that. And he's there on the fly, like adapting to it. Like it wasn't always perfect. And then other calls that he'd nail, and you'd just be like, man, that is so cool. I can't wait till I'm capable of doing that. So yeah, I'd imagine that's applicable, but in this kind of new format of 2024.
Yeah, and I think the old ways of selling have changed. Relationship building is key, right? You still have to have a relationship, so even the conversations that we've kind of had, technology has changed so much, AI, automation, there are many different ways in which you can get a touch point. But I truly believe that you can't automate relationship building. You have to actually engage and have a conversation with someone. What I learned actually going through my last consulting gig as well is that you also can't speed up the relationship process, the building process. First thing I talk about my own process was get someone's attention, build engagement, rapport, trust, and then hopefully you'll generate an opportunity. You can't rush that. And I think what I've seen now is very much that kind of insight selling methodology where, we're saying, okay, hey, Mr. Client, here's a scenario, or here's an example, here's a case study that what we're seeing. Are you kind of dealing with this? Is candidate turnover, or are you dealing with a candidate shortage in this particular kind of sector? Let me tell you how we're kind of navigating this. Here's a solution that we've kind of put forward. But also, the big thing that we're focused on here, and you'll see on LinkedIn, is our outbound kind of event strategy. So, we're hosting smaller, kind of more intimate roundtables, thought leadership kind of led, talking about candidate care. What about technology? We're talking about Brisbane, then one in Canberra for kind of federal government. So almost that's the big thing as well. It's got to be outbound in terms of taking your solutions to market, in terms of sitting back and kind of waiting for things as well. So, finding different ways in which you can actually provide insights, I guess, to the market is kind of a big driver for us.
And are you then packaging those up and distributing them via socials? One thing I asked, because one thing that I think I don't know if this was intentionally or just because you're a bit of like a LinkedIn pest like me, but you would always, like, whenever you'd release a video, you'd always like send it to me and and then send something to me to try and like wind me up a little bit.
Sorry about that.
And then, so yeah, you're like spamming me one-to-one these video, but you'd send like a funny little message attached to it, and then I'd inevitably click into it, and then I'd like start commenting because you'd kind of like really lent on the personal relationship thing. I think you have to be creative. Like, it's one thing to put yourself in front of the camera and create some content and share it, but then behind the scenes, you need to be driving it out there and responding to comments and tagging people and pushing it out even via email or sharing via business accounts. Like, it's not as easy as just filming the content. There is then like a distribution effort that sits underneath that ultimately determines if the content's going to be successful or not.
Oh, mate, 100%. And, for me, I constantly look at the data. So in terms of, everything, impressions, engagements, what do people like? There is a very simple framework for the videos that I put out, always under 60 seconds, typically, might go over, odd once or twice, try and give 2 or 3 points of kind of engagement, but it's authentic, and I don't read from scripts, so sometimes I mess up, and you'll see me, I kind of stumble, but the first few videos used to take me 50, 60 goes, now I've got it down to about 2 or 3, and I think that just comes with the confidence in front of the camera. So, what I try and portray is authenticity, adding some value. If I was to come in and try and give everyone financial advice, I think they'd be like, what the hell is he on about today? So it's always about the same thing: branding, relationship building, growth, kind of sales, and that relationship kind of building. So it always follows the same kind of theme. So that hasn't changed since day one. But you're absolutely spot on. You have to drive it. There's a good friend of mine, Mario Beckish, who's does a lot of it with video, and he was giving me pointers in terms of how to get this going. And the key things he said is, the commitment and consistency. So it's the consistency that kind of gets you through. But I was always listening to feedback. It was funny, in the early days, you would get feedback, and it was just 99% could say they liked it. It was that 1% that really used to drive you insane. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to get comfortable with the fact of, if you get a couple of thousand views on your social media profile, the chance is that someone out there is not going to like what you're putting out. And then also, what I found, and this comes with experience, is that the numbers change. When you first start doing something, you might get 10,000 views, and then it might sit at around 2,000 to 3,000 or what have you, and that's okay, because what you're doing is you're building an audience, and people actually like your content. And I think this is the other thing, looking at data, get an understanding, are you reaching that kind of target audience, those who are kind of consistently kind of engaging. So that was something, again, I had to get my kind of head around in terms of what was, where the content was landing and whether it was actually reaching the right audience.
Yeah, nice, man. And if I was a leader in a business that was going through a softer period and trying to work out how I could utilize this strategy or utilize this channel, what would be your advice? Like the first thing or the most important thing for me to consider if I was in pursuit of this?
Yeah, I think acknowledgement that things have changed. I believe there's been more kind of evolution, change, disruption in the last 2 to 3 years than probably there has been the last 10, in the recruitment industry, and particularly with sales. So acknowledgement that things have changed. Your team probably a little bit kind of, beaten down or whatever, but things will always change. We've always seen this: when the market dips, it always bounces back, and it tends to bounce back faster and better than before. You've got to be willing to try new things. That's the key thing, right? So, just because, and I heard this from a lot of recruitment leaders, this is the way I used to do things 20 years ago. It has changed, right? It's no longer just a numbers game. It's about quality. So I would much rather, and I say this, people make less calls, but make better calls. Using social media, if you're targeting Mike, has Mike engaged with your content? All these kind of things. So adapt new ways of thinking. So that inside selling, use social media. That's a key thing. But put yourself out there, and don't underestimate the value of the personal brand. That's the one thing today that is really sets, I believe, the top performers apart from those who are just really kind of in that, that maybe that kind of middle bracket, without being disrespectful, is they've got a strong personal brand. They're putting themselves out there, and it takes courage. But if you're expecting your team to do this, then they're going to look to you and go, okay, are you actually leading from the front? So try new things, be open to feedback, and lead from the front. That's probably my best advice.
And mate, I know you're in at Pinpoint Talent, like obviously leading from the front there with a million things on. But if you got any recruitment leaders out there that are wanting to ask a question or shoot the shit with you in your LinkedIn DMs, are you welcoming of random messages?
Mate, always. And I think this is I'm a networker, mate. I enjoy the relationship building. Always, you know what I mean? So, mate, very much I appreciate it. Anyone wants to connect, by all means, feel free. But, mate, I've really enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully there's some pearls of wisdom on here for you, mate, that people might benefit from.
I hope so, man. Really, thank you very much. Appreciate the time, and look forward to seeing that face again in the LinkedIn feed soon.
Cheers, mate. All the best.
Guy.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to the LinkedIn guy.